feel like a roadie. Testing. 1, 2. All right, we're right. Okay. I used to play in a band and I always used to joke that our road name should have been Experiencing Technical Difficulties. I think we're right. Okay. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Karen, for the music. That was beautiful. Thank you. Well, friends, good afternoon. We've gathered together today as the family and the friends of Kenneth Raymond Beaton, better known as Ken, to mourn his passing and to remember and to celebrate his life. We're here today too to commit his spirit and his mortal remains to God and to the elements, and to offer our love and care and support to those of you who knew him best. And as well, perhaps along the way, we may find a small piece of meaning and understanding, not just of death, but perhaps too of life. Before I go any further, please let me briefly introduce myself. I'm the Reverend Graham Anson. I'm the minister here at Corrimal Uniting, and I welcome you here this afternoon. The other thing I always say at this point in time in a service is that if you've got your mobile phone switched on, you might want to put it on silent or do not disturb or turn it off, just to avoid possible embarrassment. And my words of advice, if you're 50-50, would be don't think it can't happen to you. Done enough of these to know. And there's no prize for the most interesting ringtone. Friends, death is a mystery. It's an unavoidable unknown on each of our journeys. Not one of us avoids it, not one of us escapes it, and I've never met anyone who's really that interested in the topic unless they themselves are facing it. And you know, death and life, they have this strange relationship, one that's probably too deep and too hard to unpack in the time we have here today. And whilst I know people either ponder or reject the idea of life after death, I actually think the purer spiritual question is whether there's life before death. And if so, what does truly living abundantly look like? We'll come to that a bit later. But for now, all I want to do is affirm that the Christian faith is all about new beginnings. And our confidence is that Ken has now entered into his new beginning with God, whatever that looks like. He would have been met with open arms. We're assured of this, and I'm going to read to you from the scriptures. I'm going to read to you from the book of Romans. It's a fellow by the name of Paul writing. And he says this, he says, I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God known to us in Jesus. Did you get that? Did you hear what those words are saying? Because I know usually when I say something from the Bible, people go to sleep. So I want to check you're still with me. Because they're words of assurance for each and every one of us, not just the churchies, but for all of us, of God's generous and boundless love. I'm going to read to you again. This is a passage that Mark chose for today's service. And it comes from the book of Revelation. Again, these are words of assurance. These are words for all of us of comfort. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and God dwells with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things have passed away." He who was seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." So friends, hopefully you can hear God's words of assurance at times like these, that God's love is comforting and accepting and reassuring. And so at this point in time right now, we entrust Ken's spirit to God with confidence that his journey is now more closely intertwined with God's eternal, unbounded and all-encompassing love. His spirit rests in peace. Now, I've been around long enough. Just because I'm a minister of religion, I don't expect to. In fact, I'm very sure that not all of us in the room agree on everything word for word on life, death, God, faith, the universe, all that kind of stuff. You might even believe that this is all there is, that there's nothing beyond this life, that there's nothing spiritual. I want you to hear me saying very clearly that whatever your beliefs are, whatever your views are, they're respected here. You know, we haven't turned up today to argue. We've come today to remember Ken fondly. So hopefully, in the least, we can continue in that vein, remembering Ken, celebrating who he's been, telling his stories, being encouraged by the life he's lived. So I'm going to suggest we continue together in that kind of vein. And as we do continue, I am going to lead us in a prayer. And if you're not the praying kind of person, I'm just encouraging you to think about what it is that you've been thankful for in Ken's life, where Ken's met you and changed you better for that day or for however long. Let's come to God giving thanks. Eternal God, your love for us is everlasting. Your forgiveness knows no bounds. Your grace is all-encompassing, and for this we give thanks. And today we give thanks for Ken and for the life he shared with us. And in the silence now, we remember the things about him that we are particularly thankful for. The things we will miss. God, in your goodness and love, we give thanks for the gift Ken has been. Lord, we pray for Ken's family. May they be assured of your love at this time of loss. And be with us all in both comfort and in peace, knowing that your love, known to us in the life and the love of Jesus, always prevails. Have mercy on us. Grant us healing and wholeness. And we pray together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, we're going to spend time now reflecting on Ken's life. We're going to be led firstly by Paul, his son-in-law, and then Mark will share, and then Ken. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Can you hear me all right? I didn't want to be in his band either. Okay, so just on behalf of the Beaton family, just want to welcome you all here today. It's a tough day for the family, and I'm sure they appreciate your support here today. It means a lot. Mark has written out a eulogy that he asked me to read, and I'm honoured to be asked that. It's probably not a eulogy, more of a just a timeline of important events throughout Ken's life. But before I start, I just want to say on a personal note, excuse me. Ken's a man that I always respected and had a lot of admiration for. He was a man of integrity, and on the other side of the coin, as a lot of you might know, he had a great sense of humour. That respect comes from, well, even before I got to know the family, I know that Ken had problems with alcohol addiction, which his family will go into in depth after me. But in his early 40s, I know he decided to turn his life around. And he left his job at the steelworks and became a drug and alcohol counsellor, which in turn changed the dynamics of the family in a positive way. So, like I said, I won't go into detail because Kim and Mark will do that. So I'm just going to read out now what Mark has written out for me to read. So this is Kenny's story. So Kenneth Raymond Beaton was born on the 25th of February 1932 to parents Mary and Keith Beaton. Ken was born at the Crown Street Women's Hospital in Sydney. Shortly after, his parents relocated to Wollongong to take permanent residence. Mary, a housemaid, and Keith, a steelworker at Port Kembla. They also had two other children, June and Josie, who were just in the third row there. Ken started public school at Thirroul and then moved over to Corrimal Public School, but entered secondary school at Wollongong Technical College. At the age of 15, he left to start an apprenticeship that his father had secured for him at Port Kembla Steelworks as a roll turner. It was around this time that he met a young Isa Watson, known as Liz. Ken was a very good soccer player and played for Bellambi. Within this group of friends, Ken started dating Liz. Sometime after Ken had completed his apprenticeship, he left the steelworks to work in the mines. After a relatively small stay in the mines, he ended up travelling to Warren, 120 kilometres northwest of Dubbo, to work as a barman in a pub. At this point, Liz had broken off her relationship with Ken, but Liz travelled to see. At this point, Liz had broken off her relationship with Ken, but Liz travelled to see him and convinced him to leave Warren and return to Wollongong. I think Liz might have got word that there was another woman on the scene, yeah? Went up and stalked him for a few days. Anyway, won his heart back. Must run the family because the daughter did it to me when I was in Italy 30 years ago. Where were we? Sorry, I've lost my... Okay, so they returned to Wollongong where they were engaged, and Ken recommenced work at the steelworks. They were married at Belambie Methodist Church on Friday, February the 4th, 1955. Ken and Liz originally lived in Gwynville, eventually moving to 48 Lorking Street, Belambie, where they lived for 20 years, eventually buying their house at 2 Chester Street, Belambie, just opposite the pub down there. They gave birth to 4 children, Stephen, followed by my wife Jenny, Kim and Mark. Around 35 years of age, Ken had stopped playing soccer and commenced training greyhounds, which he would do for about 30 years, having much success as a trainer and treating greyhounds for injuries. Now, I remember your dad had he had an ultrasound machine, didn't he? And another machine? Because you told me that he treated soccer players, yeah? So I thought, I'll give him a ring because I had an injury, because we played soccer right into our soccer in those days. So I rang him up and I said, Ken, can you, I've got an injury, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, son, no worries. You always just call me son. Come down. So I went down one evening and I had to go training at 6, so it was around 5:30. I said, Ken, look, can you do me now? Because I've got to be at training at 6 and I want to see how the injury's going. He said, no, mate. He said, you got to wait. There's 2 dogs before you. And he said, they're more important. Because they were going to win him money. And over the years, I always had this vision of waiting in a waiting room with 2 dogs next to me. Anyway, Ken's life around this time was troubled, as I mentioned before, with his drinking. It had gotten way out of control. And life was spiralling downwards. And as I said, it was the age of 42 where he'd make a decision that would affect the life and the life of his family forever. Ken, at the end of his tether, stopped drinking and joined Alcoholics Anonymous. He would not only go on to neither drink, never again, but left his job, as I mentioned, as a role turner to train as a counsellor and managed 2 drug and alcohol rehabs, Oolong House in Nowra and Kadesh House at Berkeley, where both him and Liz helped hundreds of people. Ken and Liz's life became totally absorbed by alcoholic meetings, conventions and work, which they successfully worked together until they retired around 60 years of age. Ken's relationship with AA never stopped, and to this day, Ken has achieved nearly 50 years since his last alcohol drink. Ken and Liz saw out their retirement years travelling, visiting relatives and friends, being grandparents to 13 grandchildren, and obviously great-grandchildren now, yeah? How many? Yeah, in 2006, after a long illness, Liz passed away, and Ken, feeling a sense of duty for Liz's conviction to God, joined Corrimal Uniting Church, where he attended until his stroke in December 2018. Ken spent the remaining years in Marco Polo aged care at Woonona and died peacefully on the 23rd of August 2022. And that's Ken's story. Thank you. Thanks, mate.
Hello. I will cry at some point. It's sort of like, our train service. You know they're coming, but you don't know when. So I'll try and struggle through it. Thanks, Paul. It's great. I just want to start with some acknowledgements from the family. First of all, to Graham and this church here. Within that space, Aaron, who's doing the sound and visual, Neural Priest, who provides the flowers for the church, and also the ladies in the kitchen that'll be preparing our afternoon tea. Well, on behalf of Parsons, but really he's a family member, Lachlan Dewsbury, set up everything for us for the funeral. So thank you, Lachlan. It's his birthday today as well. Lou for the PowerPoint display we'll see. On Graham and Karen, my friends, for the music here today. And on behalf of my two sisters, I just want to thank Stephen. Dad had a stroke 3 years and 9 months ago. And Stephen was there nearly every day, caring for him. We were there a lot. Stephen was there all the time. And as much as we thanked him, I just want to say publicly, thank you, Stephen. There's just want to say what happens after here, so there'll be an afternoon tea. And then we're going to Charles G. Bowling Club to get sloshed, but not the alcoholics. It takes half of us out, by the way. I'm talking about the ones that have admitted and the ones that are still to admit. And I know who you are. So please talk to me after. I want to talk about a few aspects of Dad's life, which you might know. Dad was a high achiever. In sport, he was extremely good at soccer, tennis, and really everything he put his hand to, except golf, which he took up in his later life. He stood on the wrong side of the ball for starters, so he's never going to be good. He was a very, very good and accomplished greyhound trainer. And if anyone knows about greyhounds, there is a lot of work to get them to the highest level. And Dad was, again, totally committed. He also was like this muscle checker. So, dogs can't talk, well, not the ones that I've been around. And so you need like people to check and push their muscles to see where they're sore. Dad was considered in the area the best. And muscle men, they called them, used to charge, $5 sort of a dog. A long time ago, Dad always did it for nothing. In relationships, Dad achieved unbelievably, especially in AA with Mum. And, for nearly 50 years, Dad didn't drink. And from the time he stopped, every day of his not drinking was a day of repentance to his family for what he felt he caused before that. Dad had extremely high ethics. When we were young, there was never any swearing around us. Any what would be rated above PG level on TV now, we were sent out of the room. We couldn't watch it. So any nudity or anything like that. And for someone who was chronic alcoholic, his ethics were still very much there and intact. Respect was important to Dad. And under respect, confidentiality was his strongest suit. His word was his bond. And that would be the toughest thing that you could do to Dad, was to share something. He used to say to me, I said, "What are you doing there, Dad?" And he said, "I can't tell you, you're too mouthy." It's going to be a bit said, just a little bit by me, because Kim's going to touch on it, but if I've had the most remarks about Dad, it's his humour. Inappropriate and borderline crude at times, but all in fun for Dad. I remember Peter Deland saying to me that the only reason he goes to our family gatherings is to listen to Dad's speech. So I've got just a couple of things I just want to talk about his humour. No, I can't say that. No, I can't say that. So Dad had a fear of flying, and the first time he flew to Perth. And he said that as the plane was taking off the runway, he had a massive sort of sense of fear, and he wanted to run up to the pilot and tell him to stop, he's getting off. But he's too petrified to undo his seatbelt to get up to do it. He said when they got in the air, he wanted to go again, talk to the pilot and say, why do you have to fly so high? Why can't we just fly 6 foot off the ground and just follow the water around to Perth? And there was, in mid-flight, there was, the pilot said, oh, if everyone looks out their left, you know, you'll see it was iconic, like it was Ayers Rock or something. And he said, Dad said, well, hold on, everyone got up and went over to the left to look out the window. And Dad's thinking, well, who's sort of balancing this side of the plane? And there was a thing about traffic lights, runs in the family. Remember, so Dad used to run Tara and Brittany up to school, Corrimal Public School, come to the lights at Pioneer and Rovery Street. And I was taking Brittany to school there once, and she said, oh, these are the barbecue lights. And I said, what do you mean the barbecue lights? She said, oh, Pop says we come and sit here that much that next time he's bringing his barbecue up. Well, okay. This is the humour of the guy. Dad had a stroke. He was paralysed all down his right side, and it paralysed his throat, so he couldn't talk. He could grunt or groan, you know, but he could say one word. He could actually phrase one word. I'm not going to say what that word is, but it rhymes with fire truck. It's just the way it is. He didn't mean any harm. It's just all he could say, and say it he did. There was, when I was about 16, we used to go up to Grafton for the Greyhound Carnival there in July. We used to stay in a caravan on course. And Dad used to take like crockery and cutlery with him, and we walked in and he'd taken like this favourite cup of his, and as he walked in the caravan he slipped and dropped it and it broke. And then any time after that, for the rest of his years, when something went wrong in his life, he'd always say, if only I hadn't broken that cup. Every time, if only I hadn't broken that. It all started from there. Dad became a Christian, but he never went to church funny with Mum when she was alive. But when Mum died, such was his love of duty for Mum that he started coming. And out of that process, he became a Christian. His transformation continued from drunk to sober to Son of God. And he really sort of became Christian. He just didn't do it for duty, which was the original cause. And you know, I was ordained here in this church. I remember Dad saying to others, saying, I never thought I'd throw a minister. I want to briefly talk about AA, because him and Mum were this dynamic team. They literally helped hundreds of people, and I see many here, which is such a wonderful tribute. Why did Dad have such a love for AA? Why did Dad commit so strongly to AA? Well, come down to this for me, is that Dad knew that to help others was to secure his sobriety. And Dad loved this author. He was an entrepreneur from America. His name was Zig Ziglar. And he said this: you can have everything you want in life if you just help others, people get what they want. Dad did it. Dad realised that for him to get what he wanted, he needed to help others, and it's actually part of the 12-step program. If there was an academic appointment handed out to someone who fulfilled the 12-step program, Dad would have been an emeritus professor He was legend and wisdom on two legs when it came to AA. But he understood that his care for others was the most important thing in caring for himself. I'm going to finish with a prayer that Dad recognised and probably said every day of his life. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Typical woman, they come up with nothing and I've got everything here. Well, Mark, he talked about the more serious side of Dad. And I'm going to touch more on the humour of Dad, which my job is harder. Because, as Mark said, crossed out that, can't say that. I'd go to my daughter and I'd say, do you think that I can say this? And she said, if you have to ask, the answer's no. So, Dad, we live with a comedian. We grew up with a comedian. He taught us how to laugh. He made us who we are today through his troubled times and through his humour. A lot of things that Dad said was inappropriate, but as Mark said, round women and children, always with respect and never swearing. So I can't give you Dad's best material, but I can give you what I can say. Okay. I'm just going to touch on Dad's plane fear because I have a similar story. We were going to Cairns as a family and we were taking Dad. Dad was about 83. And I went round there one lunchtime and Dad said, Kimmy, whoever's booking me on that plane, can they book me at the back of the plane? I said, what for, Dad? He said, because I've never seen or heard of a plane reverse into a mountain, and I'm going to be safe in the middle. Another, my cousin has a beautiful Japanese daughter-in-law. And at the time she had two Japanese girlfriends, staying with her as well. And Dad was introduced to them. And Dad was like, oh, I'm never going to remember their names. I can't pronounce them. So Dad asked, could you repeat your name? They did. And then Dad said, look, I'm never going to remember them. So I'm going to call you Mitsubishi and you Toyota. Lucky the girls, Dad was never racist, so lucky the girls, they took it, they thought it was hilarious. So I'm just going to touch on a story of Mum and Dad separating before they were married, because I'm not allowed to tell you the other stories. So they separated for about over a year, and as you heard, Dad went to Warren to manage a pub. Think about that, alcoholic, managing a pub, worked beautifully for Dad. Mum went to Sydney, and she lived and worked in Sydney. Her boss came in one day. This is a bit of a lover story, really. Her boss came in one day and said, you know that guy you were engaged to? He's engaged again. Mum didn't like that. So Mum knew that he was managing the pub in Warren, so she rang the pub. And Dad came to the phone, those phones on the wall, those ones. Dad came to the phone and he said, look, I'm sorry, Mum. I know I'm late with 2 car payments, but I'll send them through on Monday. Mum should have known right then and there. Nothing's changed. But Mum said, it's not your mother, Ken, it's Les. Dad was thinking, what's wrong, because when he left Liz a year and a half ago, he said, if ever you need me, if ever you're in trouble, you can still call on me. So he said, Liz, what's wrong? And she said, nothing's wrong, but I want to come and see you. Dad said, I need to let you know, Liz, that I'm engaged again. And Mum said, yes, I know that. Can you book me some accommodation at Warren for Saturday night? Mum turns up and Mum says, now Dad's telling me this story. I didn't hear it from Mum. Dad said that Mum said, Ken, marry me. And Dad said, don't do this to me, Liz. Don't do this to me. Because my fiancée, I'm going to call her Kate, my fiancée Kate, her parents and my parents are good friends. And if I break her heart, that's not good for that friendship. And besides that, Liz, Kate and I, this will be a marriage made in heaven because she drinks as much as I do. And he said, you don't drink at all, Liz. I drink too much, and this never worked before. Mum said, that's okay, Ken, but with your relationship with Kate, where is the love? And who do you love? And Dad said, I have always loved you, Liz. I have never stopped loving you. So Dad said, okay, I'll move back to Wollongong and we'll be married. Obviously, that's what happened. About 3 months after they were married, Dad went up the street and he bumped into a guy, and this guy said to Dad, you know that girl that you were engaged to in Warren? Did you know she won the lottery? Dad's thinking, yeah, of course she did. Dad said, no, I didn't know that. Good on her. Then the guy said, sadly, Ken, did you know she passed away? And Dad said, no, I had no idea. Dad took that very seriously. It was very saddening to Dad. Number one, she was young. Number two, he was engaged to her and she was a family friend. A couple of months after Dad heard this, as Dad did, his sense of humour kicked in. And he went to Mum and he said, you just couldn't wait 3 more months because you couldn't keep your hands off me. That's why I could have been a millionaire. And then, of course, Dad's sense of humour, wanted to keep me laughing. So he said, Kimmy, if Kate had been your mother, you and Jennifer, you would have had a great nose. It'd be big, but it'd be a beauty. In closing, I'd like to close and tell you how my father, our father, left a function. You would have heard this all before. The way he left a function, the way he left our homes, the way he left anywhere. You would have heard these. Well, when Mum was alive, he used to say, come on, Liz, we're going parking. Mum had a walker. This is what he would say after Mum died. I'm going to blow this pad. I'm going to go cruising for a chick. And she won't have a walker. Then he'd say this one to Jenny and I. I'm going to find you girls and your mummy. Do you mind if she's younger than you? Or he would say simply, see you around like a risson. Toodle pip. Toodle pip to our Dad. You filled our world with laughter. You showed us how to have that sense of humour, and it sometimes is inappropriate. We have always loved you, Dad. Toodle pip. Till we meet again.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. What a lovely memory, what a lovely memory to have, of your dad. Thanks for sharing it with us. We're going to have a photo presentation now of Ken's life. So I'm going to invite you, just the photos will be on the screen. And buckle up. Wonderful memories of a life really well lived. Tara, I'm going to invite you to come and share on behalf of the grandchildren. Is that right? You ready to go? The floor is yours.
Can anyone who is earning over 400k a year please put your hands up? Because Pop wanted us to marry wealthy. Thank you for having me here and letting me speak on behalf of Ken's grandchildren. My name is Tara and Ken is our Pop. Contributing to this speech today are all of us kids, listing oldest to youngest. Blake, no, I'm joking. Dan, Jai, Carly, Lauren, Rochelle, Alyssa, Alicia, Blake, Shanae, myself, Brittany, Jaden, and Ebony. We all love our Pop and feel his loss, especially as we come together. I sadly universally say that we have contentment, that he is out of a difficult part of his life. Now with Ebony, Uncle Peter, Gran, and with God. I was so compelled to talk here today, not just because Pop was so involved in my life, but because I flew up here from Melbourne and I paid the most to be here. If you know our Pop, you will not be surprised by my jokes. I got my inappropriate sense of humour from Auntie Kim, Pop, and Dad, and discreetly Uncle Stephen too, whereas Auntie Jenny is much more appropriate. I'm sorry because I won't fill the void of Pop's humour, but I'll share about him in a way that hopefully reminds you of how funny he was. All of us are really blessed to have both Gran and Pop so engaged and present throughout our lives. They were there for every one of our birthdays, Christmas and Easter celebrations, with lots of tantrums. I definitely contributed to a lot of them. And graduations or really boring school ceremonies, and special events, of course, like funerals and weddings. When I would ask him to come, without any details like the date, he would tell me, "Oh, I have a dentist appointment that day." Or, "I promised my neighbour that I'd clip his budgie's toenails then." He was always there and available for us to pop in for a visit, even after Gran passed. Gran and Pop were such a special relationship, and they gave, showed, and endorsed so much love for all of us. He was always cheeky about that total babe he loved so much. He would ask us kids in front of her, "Ask Gran to give me a kiss," and would laugh, and we would laugh and ask Gran, who was standing right beside him, to give Pop a kiss. He would then edge closer and persist with this annoying request until she cracked it. "Oh, Ken, get out of the kitchen." was always the funny guy who had the best lines and connected with everyone. Pop bridged any gaps within any groups, no matter how difficult a person was or how much a hurt person was holding. Mark, is that you?
No, it's grandma.
Popular.
It's grandma, it's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. The bigger the gap for whoever needed it was directly enacted and provided by what Pop said and what he did. The furthest away I felt, which I'm sure is the same for anyone else, the more inappropriate he could be and would make you smile or laugh. This is one of the reasons he's so smart. With how he acted or what he directly said, he would let you know that he was on your side, that we might be wrong or misguided, and that we might also have a difficulty to show and ask for love. He heard your words and experience. He showed that he was relatable and he comforted. In particular, I need to mention that Carly, Lauren, Brittany and myself saw a lot of Pop because our successful fathers had a sick bachelor pad with him. This was living with their parents in a 3-bedroom house in Valambie that we spent quite a bit of time in. He was lucky and encouraged to be inappropriate and hilarious by all of us kids. I don't know many other men who could still be a gentleman and not swear in front of me, but also tell me the most inappropriate stories that I had to Google. I am definitely the good child. People might disagree. So my dad and my cousins understood his filthy jokes more quickly. If I had $1 for any time that I quoted Pop's jokes and stories that I hoped weren't true, we would be having this service on several catamarans. It was really important for me to talk here today. Pop was so especially involved in Brits in my life, much more than a normal grandparent needs to be. I know that he and Gran went above and beyond for all of us grandkids. Brit and I lived with Pop, Uncle Stephen and Dad. And these guys did a lot together for Gran and for us kids. We went to Pop's all the time. My mum told me about the daily visits when I was a baby. Dad was always calling into Pop's with us. I would drop in after school or before school, especially when I missed the train. I much preferred when Pop drove me to school. His driving was much less aggressive, had less tobacco smoke, and than Uncle Stephen's. I would drop in as an adult, whether I was driving past from 17 years old. He taught me how to drive at Belambie Boat Ramp. This was the 3rd generation of teaching women to drive that Pop himself did. I'm not trying to remove any responsibility, but I've lost my license twice. Whenever I was at the edge of losing myself, I dropped in because I was always welcome to Ben, and and I wanted to hear what Pop had to say. I was always better for seeing him at all and any age. No matter my irrationality or state of mental health or any disadvantage I was dealing with, he made me feel human, loved, and helped me find perspective. He probably didn't want to know as much as I shared, just like my dad. I tell everyone too much, and only recently I was diagnosed with ADHD. He had some elite skills to deal with all of that. He lived with me and had to do so much more than a grandparent to help my single father parent. He was so good, patient, and engaged me, and so many others, not just to do the right thing, but to be and go above what would be minimally expected. Gran made so much in and for our family. Pop infiltrated the same loving beliefs subtly, differently, and usually humorously. They both reinforced the same love, which they showed us all how to give in different ways. When I was the worst of me, I was always loved. Gran, Pop, and my dad, and all of us that have come from them, have shown me what God's love is. I don't think I've completely encapsulated how funny, or loving that Pop was, but I hope you know how special he was to us. So I put this in our cousin group as a chat, and I didn't check with Auntie Jenny, so I don't know if this is appropriate, but as Pop would say, let's blow this joint. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Well, you, of course, will have your own memories of Ken. They'll be the part of the journey that's been really special for you, that's been important for you. We're going to have a reflection piece of music from Graham and from Karen, and while this piece of music's playing, I'm going to encourage you, if you'd like to come, this is the time to come, to say goodbye, to give him a farewell, whatever it is you want to do, please feel free to come whilst this piece of music is playing. I'm going to say this one more time. This is a place of peace. So if you'd like to come while the music's playing, then please feel free to do so.
In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. For in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. No guilt in life, no fear in death, this is the power of Christ in me, from life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand.
Something tells me if you want to get a funny story over afternoon tea, to sit at that table. Just over here. All right, my friends. Look, friends, I met with the family late last week, whenever it was. I don't know when it was. And I've got a whole list of things I could share with you about Ken, but I can't share that. And I can't share that. Look, what I'm hoping you'll pick up from, what I want to lean my little homily into today, is just simply that my hope and my prayer for each of you is that you'll pick something out of Ken's life that will help you to be a more loving and caring and compassionate and merciful and generous kind of person. Like, our world is full of... You can pick a fight within 3 minutes of getting out the door here, or an argument with somebody in your car. You can see greed and indifference everywhere. You can find people who have given up. You can find people who have surrendered to their addictions. You can find people who don't have the courage or the strength to face what their own lostness or mess in their own life is. Lives like Ken's don't happen by accident. They don't happen by accident. They happen because you've got the courage to face stuff. They happen because you've got the intention of making a difference for good in the world around you. It's giving to others in love that is at the heart of God. That's loving your neighbour. And my hope and my prayer is that when you walk out the door of here today, you'll have found something from Ken's story that helps you to be a more loving person. You'll have found something from Ken's story that helps you to be more courageous, or to be more generous in your spirit. You'll find something that will help you to be a little less judgmental of others, or gracious or compassionate, as the other way around is talking about it. My hope and my prayer is that you'll find something from Ken's story that helps you to engage with something that's bigger than yourself, with someone who's bigger than yourself. You know, my sense of who Ken's been, he's been a tower of strength, a pillar of strength for all of you. He's been sturdy, he's been your rock, he's been that person who you go to when you need to hear, well, not because of what you want to hear, because of what you need to hear. He's the kind of person who's walked with you through thick and thin. He's the sort of person who's been loving and kind and caring and generous. And whenever you found someone like that in your life, that's always a gift. And I'm asking you, I'm encouraging you, I'm challenging you to be a gift for others around you in the same way that Ken's been a gift for you. Amen. Friends, we're now at the hardest part of any funeral service. This is farewell. We're going to give thanks for Ken's life. We're going to affirm his presence with God. And we're going to commit his mortal remains to God and to the elements. So I'm asking you, if you are able, to please stand for the committal. Ken, we thank you for all you have been and for all you have given. You gave in care and love, and we're thankful. So we leave you in God's keeping, but we carry your memory with us as we go. May you travel safely in the next part of your spiritual journey. Our love goes with you. Well done, good and faithful servant. Eternal God, we trust in your love of and care for each and every one of us. And so we trust in your love and care of Ken. From the time you first knew him, right through until the time of his earthly passing, and now through all eternity, we entrust his spirit to you. God, hold him in our hearts and in your keeping through Jesus Christ. Friends, we've entrusted Ken's spirit to God. We now also entrust his mortal remains to God and to the elements. Now that Ken's life with us has come to an end, we commit his mortal remains to be cremated. From the earth we all come. To the earth we all return. Earth to earth. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust. With the sure hope of resurrection to that which is eternal through Jesus Christ. Amen. Friends, Ken's mortal remains will eventually be laid to rest with those of other family members who have already passed. And all that's left for me now is to give you the final blessing. Friends, it is time to go. And as you leave from here now, go in peace. And may the love of God and the love you have known through Ken, let that be your guide for the journey. Thank you for your attendance today. Thank you. The way things will work now is that there'll be a couple of people who just need to move where they are so that funeral directors can come down, and then they will call on the pallbearers. Thank you. And Graham and Karen will play again for us. Thank you.
I'm just a poor boy, though my story's seldom told. I've squandered my resistance. I'm just a poor boy, though my story's seldom told. I've squandered my resistance for a pocket full of mumbles, such a promises. All lies and jest, still a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. When I left my home and my family, I was no more than a boy in the company of strangers, in the quiet of a railway station, running scared, lying low, seeking out the poorer quarters, where the ragged people go, looking for the places only they would know. La la la, la 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. I'm laying out in my winter clothes and wishing I was gone, going home, where the New York City winters are bleeding me, leading me, going home. In the clearing stands a boxer and a fighter by his trade, and he carries the reminders of every glove that laid him down or cut him till he cried out in his anger and his shame, I am leaving, but the fighter still remains.